this is Saulo Ribeiro talking about this is one of the submissions Rickson caught me with. And then Rickson's like, doesn't name names, but he says, well, oh, when all these famous champions, talk about me arm locking them or choke them, they always ask me, like, show me the arm lock, show me the choke. And he's like, no, the reason they lost is their heart rate was too high. And he said, I show them the arm lock, I show them the choke, but the thing they should ask me is, why did you lose? And it's like, because my heart rate's 150 and theirs is 180, and at around 180, their body just starts to effectively shut down. They can't think straight and so on. He said, and that's when I apply the arm lock or I apply the choke. He exhausts them. And so this is I mean, it's just without question. And then within chess, Boris Gelfand has been a guy who I think tied with Vichy for the world championship. Vichy kept the world championships. He didn't beat him. I think he drew with him. But Vichy Anand was a world champion. And Gelfand is all about the heart rate and keeping the heart rate as low as he possibly can. So you just hear this, and obviously Gukesh's coach says all the same thing. It's all about keeping the heart rate down. So the more you can keep your heart rate down during rolls, the better your decision making is going to be, the more you're going to remember of the roll, the more you're going to learn.
Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a third-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a respected Jiu-Jitsu and MMA instructor, and he teaches out of his own gym, SBG Rossendale, just north of Manchester, England. He's helping spread the movement of breathwork in Jiu-Jitsu, and he's one of the leading voices in that area. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be joined today by Professor Glyn Powditch. How are you today, Glyn?
Thank you. Yeah, very well. Thank you, Ryan.
Excellent. It's great to have you here, Glyn. So, Glyn, if you don't mind, tell us about where you're from originally and what life was like before you found jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, so I'm from near the south, basically, from near London originally, and I football and chess were pretty much everything. I played a bit of golf and cricket, but I played football to a decent level. I played for Bolton Wanderers, who are a team that's they call them a yo-yo team. In the US, you don't really have relegation, but in the Premier League, you have in Premier League, a Premier League Champions League, and Bolton Wanderers were kind of a yo-yo team at that time, going between the two. So I played at Bolton, I played at Reading, who are another yo-yo team in like the youth team, and pretty decent at chess. And then I think I got to about 18 and I was kind of tired of football. I felt like, all I'd ever done from the age of I could remember was play football 5 nights a week and weekends. And there wasn't a great deal of money as well at that time. You see the contracts the guys are on these days, even at the lower levels, but back then there wasn't the money. And I think I was kind of done with it. And I started lifting weights, really. I'd started lifting weights for football. And then I started doing online private classes with Mike Mensa, which Matt Thornton pointed out to me might have been a kind of precursor to the future, because Mike Mensa was, obviously famous bodybuilder, but very interested in philosophy and interested in, I think, efficiency as well. He was, a real kind of driver of efficiency. And so pretty quickly realized from having some coaching with Mike that I wasn't going to be lifting weights all day, and I had a lot of energy. And I also thought as well, like I didn't particularly like going to general exercise classes. I didn't really see too much benefit, but I was always interested in martial arts. And now that kind of football was gone, and like I didn't need to train a lot in terms of lifting weights, I needed something really to occupy my time. And I read about effectively what was human cockfighting, was how it was described as. And of course that was the first UFC with Royce Gracie. And what struck me about that was that the smallest guy in the entire thing had beaten up all these other experts in martial arts. And so I got that first UFC one, I watched it, and I remember my girlfriend at the time was like, God, are you ever going to stop watching this? But I just couldn't put the thing down. And so I wanted to find somewhere to train. And to begin with, there wasn't really, back then, I'm 46 now, and I was around 21 at the time. There wasn't really much distinction really between jiu-jitsu and MMA back then, to nowhere near the degree there is now. So when you were looking for somewhere to train, it was really hard to find anywhere. And about maybe a good 40 miles away from where I was, there was a guy called Lee Hasdall who'd fought in Rings, Japan. He was like down as being like the first, I think, professional UK MMA fighter. So he was out there, and he'd come back and opened a school. And there was a guy called Danny Batten sort of running the school for him, who was, went on to become a Cage Warriors champion. And so I kind of started in MMA really as because that was an MMA club primarily. Did a bit of jiu-jitsu, but it was primarily Thai boxing. And then Danny started to do more and more in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Had a Brazilian guy over called Eduardo Cariello, who now fourth or fifth degree black belt, runs a bunch of Gracie Barras around London. And I started to train with him, do privates with him. And it was just like the UFC scenario, this relatively small Brazilian guy just smashing me to pieces. So I was doing privates with him all the time, and the privates mainly consisted back then of him showing me a few things, and then just for an hour and a half just beating the daylights out of me, really. And I was hooked, completely hooked. So that was really the journey to jujitsu. So it's funny because it's difficult to remember life now without jujitsu, but there definitely was a life before it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. I think everyone listening knows exactly what you mean. It really is like a life changing journey we get on. There's a
Right.
couple cool things you talked about in your past that I'd like to zoom in on. First, you mentioned Mike Mentzer.
Yeah.
I'm actually following his methodology now. I just started like
Oh,
3 months
wow.
ago, following the heavy duty
Right. Awesome.
methodology. I'm
Yeah.
noticing a big difference. I really do notice a big difference in my results when I'm lifting. And
Right.
it's cool because the idea is that you don't have to be in the gym every single day. That he really emphasizes the taking long breaks between, like taking like 5 to 7 days between
Right.
each muscle group before you do it again. That's not something I ever did before. I assumed, I got to hit like 3 days a week and go go go. But actually,
Right.
I think I was maybe limiting my results by doing that.
100%. And as Dave Camarillo says to us, we lift humans. We shouldn't forget
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
so
That's a
so
great
so we're
point.
already lifting a resisting human being at different angles, and so we're already doing a high pretty, and it depends obviously how intensely people train in their daily sessions, but some people train a lot more intensely than others and go harder, and you've got to think about the wear and tear on your body and just recovery. Something else you might be interested in is so over the kind of COVID lockdown, I got it kind of was like a restart for me on a few things. So one is obviously we'll come on to is breath work, but another one was sort of catching up with people that I kind of knew of, because obviously Mike's been gone a long time, and I was interested in terms of who's actually driving the methodology forward. And there's a great resource in Drew Bay. So Drew was writing for Mike, and that was how I don't know if you know Drew at all, but he was writing on MikeMenser.com, and Drew has kind of connected with Ken Hutchins, who was another one of like Arthur Jones' guys. Ken Hutchins was basically doing a lot of the research, the kind of physical research that Arthur Jones was doing in the universities, and started building his own line of machines as well. Um, and Ken and Drew were really big on it, actually improving form. So one of the things that they said that they felt like, Drew said Mike would have advanced on was when you watch some of the actual form of the exercise, Drew basically says that he feels that Mike would have gone towards where Ken Hutchins' thinking was, which is actually really slow, really super slow, like the super slow movement as they call it, with Doug McGuff. And so that whole area has been super interesting for me. Time static contractions. I don't really lift weights anymore. I just do these time static contractions. And with jujitsu, I find like 46 now. I'm on the mat every single day. That's about all my body can take is a few time static contractions. So even less injury risk with time static contractions. You really are just flexing against something that's fixed. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a super interesting thing to explore if you haven't.
That is really cool. Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to look into Drew because I'm not familiar with him currently. I found Mike Metzer's stuff on YouTube. Actually, I was just looking through some
Right.
just general information about lifting and cutting weight and things like that, and I found
Right.
it, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And as I kept watching, there's all these things he was saying about like the recovery, how important recovery time is, and that you shouldn't hit the same muscle group within just a couple of days. You should give it a little
Right.
bit longer for your body to recover. Another thing was the idea of working to failure, with the goal being failure. And I always did this deal where it's like, okay, I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 or 12 of whatever I'm doing. And he said
Right.
that famous thing. He says, "Well, dude, your body doesn't know math. Like your body doesn't know that your
Right.
body understands. I've worked the muscle to exhaustion, and now I got to stop and let it recover so it grows." And I thought, man, it's funny. I've never thought of that before. Like your
Right.
body really doesn't know the difference between the numbers. It doesn't do math. So it just knows, hey, this
100%.
muscle is now exhausted. Yeah. So really
He
cool that
was
you mentioned that.
I think he was decades ahead. I really
I
do.
think, yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm no expert in the industry or in the field, but it's been very beneficial for me so far to follow his
That's awesome
program.
to hear.
I noticed a big difference. Yeah. Something else you mentioned in your life before jiu-jitsu, you mentioned both a participation in sports and also chess. And I'd like to
Yeah.
zoom on that because there are two things that I've always seen people who do really well in jiu-jitsu when they first come in as white belts. If they have a sports background, especially wrestlers, obviously, or
Right.
judokas, anyone that has a sports background though tends to accelerate a little faster just because their body's a little more primed for the activity. But also chess players. I've known a few people that are really high level chess players, and they just seem to grasp the strategies and they understand jiu-jitsu a little
Right.
quicker than your average Joe. Do you feel like once you got involved because of your background with sports and chess that it gave you a bit of an edge?
Yeah, I think so. I think that with chess, I mean, there's so many sort of elements to it that cross over. So things like actually first principles. So in chess, for example, there's really interesting debates that will go on even amongst grandmasters, and I think they get arguments solved much more quickly than in jiu-jitsu, because in jiu-jitsu there's always these elements of physical attributes. You have someone with tremendous physical attributes, and sometimes they'll be unfairly dismissed because they have tremendous physical attributes. A lot of the time they're rightly dismissed because it's kind of like taking business advice from somebody with a trust fund. Um, so if somebody's in there and they're like, oh, a number of times I hear guys who are like, 225 complaining about the guy who's 275. And it's like, you're one of the biggest beasts statistically on the planet if you're 225 and pretty lean, but they'll still complain about the guy who's 275. And then it's like, well, so it's one of those. But yeah, you get things like controlling the center in chess is incredibly important, and you'll get a debate like the French defense. Does the French defense break chess principles? Because so for anyone that isn't familiar, the chess defense, a very common defense taught, works at the highest levels. Magnus plays it, but you don't typically always castle your king. And so you get grandmasters who say it's a ridiculous opening. Why do you leave your king in the center? And as a famous chess instructor pointed out, well, the number one principle of an opening in chess is to control the center. Hodger Gracie talks about controlling the center all the time. Hickson talks about controlling the center. John Danaher talks about controlling the center. And so you don't castle, but castling isn't a first principle in an opening. The first principle is to control the center. And what the French does is controls the center no matter what. And so you end up getting, if you have any level of chess exposure, a lot of the ideas that are within chess are actually like things become fairly obvious. When you hear first principles in jiu-jitsu, some people think you just mean basics. And basics and principles are not really the same things. Um, and so you're familiar with these concepts before you even get in. And another thing is tempo. So people sometimes who are good at jiu-jitsu but have only played chess say there's no timing in chess. That's completely wrong. As you go up the levels, you discover that there is a thing called, basically they call it tempi, but the whole idea is things like making your opponent move the same piece twice in an opening, so you steal back the initiative in the game. There are all kinds of things that I think are misunderstood on this, and even into like breathwork, which we'll come on to. Um, Multiple grandmasters work on breathwork in chess because they realize that lowering their heart rate actually helps them improve. And the more I talk to my chess coaches about this, the more they point out more grandmasters that have talked about this and done lectures on it that I wasn't even aware of.
That's really incredible. Yeah, you could definitely see a lot of crossover with the strategy and just the
Right.
overall mindset of chess and jiu-jitsu. Being several steps ahead, thinking several steps ahead is obviously something super important. And now that brings us to you mentioned breath work. That's definitely something that we want to talk about with you today. How did you first get into breath work? Where did that aspect of your journey come into play?
Yeah, so my wife tried to get me into breath work because she said she thought it would improve my jiu-jitsu, and like my attitude was like, you don't even train. Um, so like I just wasn't interested, and she sort of talked about us going to yoga. I went to yoga with her, and they sort of talk about, oh, breathe in, breathe out. I realized that a lot of yoga instructors, I think, do not a very good job on breath work. Now I've kind of been spoiled with some of the instructors that I've managed to get at. Um, but that was my first exposure to it, and I did nothing about it. I didn't take it particularly seriously. Um, I was then diagnosed with asthma as well, which pretty much finished me competitively. I was finding that I was having matches, and I couldn't. And this came almost felt like it came from nowhere. I didn't have it before. I'd compete, was doing fine. This is in jiu-jitsu, and then all of a sudden, I just found I just couldn't breathe, and so I get diagnosed with asthma, um, and that like I had to slow the pace of everything I was doing, and then I got the chance to go to a Hickson Gracie seminar. Hickson made a kind of comeback around 2015 after kind of years away. He kind of made a public comeback, and he did a seminar at Portland, Oregon at SBG headquarters. So obviously I'm part of SBG. And my wife said, "Why don't you go to it?" And so I did the 23 hours of flying out there, stayed out there for the week. I remember thinking, I hope Hickson doesn't do his self-defense stuff. I wasn't interested in that at all. Was kind of dismissive of it. I wanted to learn the groundwork in my head. That was what I wanted to learn. And then he basically kind of did an hour of the 3 hours talking about breath work. And so I thought, well, I really do need to learn this now. My wife said to me about it, and with asthma and so on. And he spent so an hour of the first three, and then he gets to kind of the end of the hour, and then he picks me up and starts doing the self-defense stuff with him. So 180 people, and he partners with me to do it. And he literally, Ryan, just dragged me around that mat like a rag doll. Uh, and it kind of really opened my eyes to that side of it. I do understand why people are dismissive of elements of it, but I also now get what his objectives are, which I think are a little bit different. And in terms of like, he's actually really explaining the principles of base, and so that's really what changed it. But I still didn't really do anything properly until COVID hit, and then in COVID, I think a lot of us got a chance to actually kind of like take a step back and get interested in some different things that get started some projects that we've been delaying. And so I got onto Henry Akins, and I said to Henry Akins, what did Hickson teach you about breath work? And he said, well, he never taught us anything about it. He started talking about this. We've known that he always did it. We used to hear him making all these noises, but he never coached it in class. And like Henry was with him for like 12 years. Um, but he said, I recommend going and speaking to Bliss of Ranich. He said, I was kind of same kind of mindset. And he said, Bliss of Ranich is the best I've found on this. So I went and did her 12-week certification on it, and no longer use the inhalers. That's been one of the big takeaways from it. I think I was actually over breathing in an effort to get too much air in, and I think I've kind of like this happens apparently in some athletes. They can cause kind of asthmatic symptoms or maybe give themselves asthma, but I don't use them anymore. And it just completely has changed my life on so many levels. It's improved my jiu-jitsu. I've also found as I've gone further into chess that, as I say, like Gukesh, who's the current world champion, his coach is a guy, grandmaster called Vishnu Prasanna. If you sign on to his online chess program, every week they have a psychology session, and the psychology session is basically all about breath work and talking through transaction analysis within games, your internal voice going through child, adult, parent states. But the cure is always breath work. And so that's kind of the journey in a kind of nutshell. Um, but the more I look around, the more I keep finding that the top people in different disciplines, there's somebody within that, and it's usually someone right near the top who's saying, breath work is like the single easiest thing you can do to get better at whatever it is that you're doing.
it's interesting too to look at breath work through the lens of combat sports, because I
Right.
think something that you see a lot of new people to jiu-jitsu do is you notice that they just hyperventilate as they first start rolling and training. They clearly don't
100%.
have control of their breath, and we all went through it. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not any different. I went through the exact same thing too. But if someone had told me beforehand, hey, like really be mindful of your breathing, I think it probably would have helped me a little bit in those early days. What do you think are some of the most common misconceptions about breath work? What are some things when people think of breath work? What are some things they might be thinking that aren't quite accurate?
I think that one is that people that they're being conned and just sold something. That's definitely a thing that you get. I've seen comments on breathwork courses on Reddit, my own, other people's, and it's like, oh, people are charging you now to learn, to teach you something you do anyway, right? Like this is ridiculous. That's one of the things. Another one is, oh, you just relax. If you just learn to relax, then you don't need to worry about this at all. And it's just like everyone I've ever rolled with who said, like, everyone high level I've ever really rolled with doesn't ever have that attitude. I've not had one of them say that yet. Maybe there is somebody, but I've never had any of them say that. And the number of them that I've rolled with, some of them are BJJ black belts, and like they tap to pressure, and and it's like they tell you beforehand that they're relaxed, but then like you roll with them and it's like you just tap to pressure. It's like, I don't want to labor it, but it's like you basically dismissed what I said to you, and now we've rolled and I've put weight on your diaphragm, and I'm not big, I'm like 180 pounds. It's ridiculous, and it's completely solvable. That's the other thing is that attitude is probably like holding back so many people in terms of their jiu-jitsu progression. And like you can literally, so to your point around beginners, if you get a beginner that really focuses on all the elements of breathwork, this isn't just breathwork patterns, but also like there's specific stretches that Belissa will get you to do that opens up your rib cage. Like so as we age, particularly we get to about 40, and she's got this in her book. We lose a ridiculous amount of basically our lung capacity through our rib cage, just very gradually doing this to us. It's why people start saying
Oh,
things like my cardio sucks as I'm getting older. Our rib cages are doing that to us. And
oh
so if you
wow.
keep the rib cage flexible and you stretch it and you open it out and you do specific exercises for it, you can actually, effectively grow it. You can keep it malleable, and your lungs can keep your lungs are not really, in most cases in terms of aging, your lungs, if you were in a post-mortem, they could put a pump in it and they could pump that lung up, and the lung would just go. It's the rib cage that's restricting it. So I think there
Wow.
are all these misconceptions because people just have no idea about what the hell they're talking about. And it's only when you go and do a certification or you work with somebody, and then I've got a purple belt in my gym who's just really gone to town on this stuff. I cannot tap him to pressure now, even like in the Soul Stealer, kind of Henry Aiken's kind of scarf hold. It's pretty gnarly, and like I just couldn't tap him to it. And I've seen, and I've told this story, and Henry's verified it as well. Um, I went and trained at one of Henry's camps, and I'd seen Henry on a YouTube video that he did tapping all these different black belts. How long could they survive? He had this different thing of how long they could survive his Soul Stealer, and there's plenty of black belts tapping in like 8 seconds, 8 9 seconds. And like, and I mean, that's not like these aren't. This doesn't mean they're bad or whatever. It just is like it's a gruesome position. It's absolutely gruesome, and there is no doubt I would have tapped to that within seconds as well prior to doing this. And I only did this as a first, what was I, first degree, maybe coming up second degree black belt. So I did the course at that point, and I would have tapped, no doubt about it. I would have tapped. I'd have blamed my lungs. I could have made all the excuses with my asthma and my two inhalers. And then I went and trained with Henry out in Costa Rica. It was 38 Celsius at the Hero Academy. Anyone that's been there, there's no aircon. It's basically a shed in paradise, but it's boiling hot. We'd done the seminar. We'd all been sparring, and Henry got me during sparring in the Soul Stealer, and he in the end gave up. And then he mounted me and he armbarred me. But the point of me telling this story is that this is something that is so ridiculously trainable that you can survive a 235 pound, Hickson Gracie black belt, who's this position is like, it's like the Bret Hart sharpshooter, right? It's like, nobody's getting, it's like this thing of always like nobody's getting out. Once Henry lands it, everyone's like, oh, that's done. It's all over. Guy's going to be tapping the back any second. And like, you can just breathe through it. You can breathe through it. And so you then start to realize that this is actually way, way deeper. And so things like one of the things I've started to now do since my Breathe to Win instructional is I started to realize that people who defend triangles, triangle chokes in particular, but any of the triangular chokes where there's your arm is involved, head and arms, etc., you can definitely improve any escape that you do by literally full inhale, filling your belly, filling your chest, getting into a bracing breath, just like you're doing a deadlift or a squat. If you're a power lifter, they call it, I think they call it Valsalva. But like, you get people to compare trying to exhale when they're doing their triangle defense and then just pure inhale, just bracing as much as you can while doing the defense. And I tell you, when you try to triangle them as well, you feel the difference. One is like the success rate if they're exhaling is just way, way higher. And there's a few reasons for that as well. That the main one is, and the reason powerlifters do this is it gives their spine something to flex against. So if you think about a Coke can when it's full, how structurally sound it is, right? So if it was sealed with air, that wouldn't really matter. It's sealed with a liquid. But when you empty it, when it's empty, you can crush it really easy, right? But it's almost a strongman thing. If you can crush a can of Coke, it's like, wow, you've got an incredible grip, right? And so it's that kind of concept of just filling up as much as you possibly can when you're in these kind of like positions where you want to do almost everything to get out. And that usually is like, people are then like, oh wow, or they'll say, oh well, I've always done this, and it's like, well, great, it's good that you've always done it, it's a shame you never coached it. So
That's very interesting. This is very interesting. You get extra points for mentioning the sharpshooter on the podcast. I appreciate
exactly.
that.
You've got to get it in,
right? So following up with what you said, though, the argument that you're basically teaching someone to do something that they already do for free or do naturally. I mean, that's the same argument as saying that humans naturally grapple each other in altercations. So why take jujitsu? I mean, it doesn't mean that something you naturally would do can't be done significantly better, So let me ask you this. For new people out there that are going through that hyperventilation stage of their training, where they're just exhausting themselves by getting too amped up and not controlling their heart rate and their breathing, what is something today that they could start doing in training that would help them immediately through breath work?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of even just like so first off is just seeing I think the difference it can make for you. So I'm a big fan of Wim Hof. And I haven't officially done his method. I've done quite a few of his courses online. I kind of completed it some time back. And one of the things he does is just these kind of like breathing rounds. So first off is like, I'm not big on meditation. I was never a kind of meditation kind of guy. I was always like achievement, drive, goals, objectives, qualifications, all that kind of thing. But like, he does some great breathing rounds on YouTube, which don't cost anything. And you just listen to his instruction, follow it. Like, even just doing this in the car, if you're in the car park, just doing a few breathing rounds before you even go in the gym and just switching yourself off. So you're actually going in relaxed. You literally, he does it's about 40 into the belly, into the chest, just inhale, exhales, and then one final big inhale, and then just hold it for as long as is comfortable. You're not holding the breath for like, and you're not like tensing, you're relaxing, just a breath hold, as long as it's comfortable. Like 3 rounds of that is just such a game changer. Even 1 round is phenomenal, but 3 rounds of it's a complete game changer. You can completely switch off. And when you kind of come back round, you feel like you've been, you sometimes like 3 rounds, you feel like you've been asleep for a couple of hours. It's like, oh wow, this is like a whole world of difference. And that's just like on YouTube, and it costs you nothing. So that's a great thing you could do. Another one is just simple like box breathing methods, where all you're simply doing is, I always try and emphasize the belly if you can, just putting the hand on the belly, hand on the chest, but just literally just nasal breath, shut your mouth, in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds. You can do 6 seconds. You can play around with the pattern. It's actually, one of the things I feel with breathwork as well is there's not really much right or wrong. You can kind of experiment and you can go with what feels right for you. But just that simple process of just 4 seconds of just focusing on exhaling, just getting all the air out of your belly, 4 seconds of not breathing, 4 seconds in. Do that for a little while. If you wear a Fitbit, and like even Fitbits now actually, and the Apple Watches, they all have these devices built into them, and they'll literally monitor your heart rate, and you'll see your heart rate just falling and falling and falling just as you're doing it. So there's so many simple things on this, Ryan, that you can do. We're now spoilt for choice on it, I think.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's interesting you brought up box breathing, because box breathing is something that I used to help myself with anxiety I'm sorry,
Perfect.
with insomnia years ago.
Right.
Yeah, I was dealing with insomnia for a stretch of time, and box breathing is something that really helped me kind of calm and get to sleep and not have such racing thoughts as I'm laying in bed. And obviously, I mean, I could see how there's always that phase that you go through in jiu-jitsu where you have to just learn how to be comfortable in uncomfortable places.
It's absolutely.
Yeah.
How can you? I mean, how can you learn? This is one of the things. So Vishnu Prasanna said this. This is Gukesh's coach at chess, and he was saying that he doesn't feel like he can coach somebody who isn't relaxed. And this is one of the things. This is why he gets them to do the breath work. It's like, I cannot coach you at chess if you're not relaxed, if you're distracted, if you're stressed, if you have anxiety. Another chess grandmaster has a website. It's a big online instructional. I think it's like about $1,200 a year to be a member. I think it's the most expensive one out there I know of. It's called Chess Mood. And it said, why did you call it Chess Mood? Was it because there was no domains left or whatever somebody said to him, and he was laughing? But he's like, no, it's because when you play chess, your mood is everything. He said, if you come in with a negative mindset when you're playing, he's like, I don't think you can compete, because the minute your opponent plays a move and your mindset's not right, you'll be like, oh, I was hoping he wasn't going to play that. Or what is it I do here? You're already in that negative. It's so easy to do in chess. It's so easy to do in jiu-jitsu. That self-talk, and he was also Prasanna was also talking about when he was at the candidates. He got to so candidates is what you go in to try to play for the world title, and he got all the way to candidates, and then realized during the middle of a match that he'd basically hung his bishop. So what I mean by hung his bishop is he had literally, his opponent could take his bishop and he couldn't take it back. And he said, the minute I played the move, as I let go of the piece, I was like, oh my God. Like, I couldn't let my opponent know. I'm like, oh my God. And he said, I had to walk away from the board to see him not see my reaction. So he said, if I see the reaction, he said, that would be. And so he said, I walked away over the other side of the room. At that level, they can see the board in their head anyway. So they can, their visualization is so amazing. But he said, I walked away. I looked at it, and he said, he said, this is why I have you doing the transaction analysis. He said, I went through the kid reaction, which was like, oh, what have I done? I'm reacting like a child. It's almost like the tantrum, physical reaction, just completely gone. He said, and then it's like, and then he said, I just took a few breaths, because what else could you do? He said, and then I thought about it, and I thought to myself, I've got to get my mind back a little bit here. And and then I said to myself, which is the adult transaction analysis. I said to myself, well, look, you've worked hard, you've come all this way, right? Let's just see what we can do about this position. And he said, and so I took a few more breaths at that point, felt a little bit more relaxed. He said, and I started to look at the board. And he said, and now he said, I asked myself, what's my opponent going to do next once he takes the bishop? So he takes the bishop. What now happens? And he said, and I looked at it and I thought, his position's horrible. So he takes the bishop, but I've got him all penned in here. And so he takes the bishop, he's got nowhere to go. This position is really, really bad for him. It doesn't actually help him positionally. All my pieces are pointing at his king, etc. And so in the end, he comes to the conclusion, hey, it's okay. And the opponent didn't even take the bishop.
Oh wow. After
And
after
so
after all that, he didn't even notice the mistake. Wow.
yeah, he just like he obviously thought the position is he'd actually the guy was like, if I take the bishop, I mean he definitely saw it, but he must have come to the same conclusion. But the point
It
was he
doesn't really
thought he'd made
matter.
a bad move and he just panicked and told himself he'd lost. Now in
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu, we don't usually get that time to reflect maybe as much. But this is the solution is still the same. I make a mistake. There's nothing I can do about it. Deep breath. Do I feel better? No. Deep breath, deep breath, deep breath. Okay. And we deal with it, right? But there's nothing else we can
Yeah.
do. And Carl Jung, who's kind of Jordan Peterson's kind of intellectual mentor, at least, obviously he died a long time before Jordan Peterson ever entered the planet, but he's built upon Carl Jung. He is a Jungian. And Carl Jung said basically the same thing in therapy in, I think it was like 1800s, early 1900s. He was basically the same thing. Like we can talk through all these problems that we've got and we can intellectualize them and so on. But like the solution almost always is going to come back to we're just going to have to take a deep breath. And do you feel better, Ryan? Not yet. No. Well, take another one. And that's that ends up being the ultimate solution. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny we're talking about this because not long ago I was watching on YouTube a video of what is that chess master Magnus
Carlson, yeah,
yeah, thank you. There's a video of Magnus Carlsen. He was in a match and I believe he lost. But I
right,
noticed because I sort of went down a rabbit hole where I'm just watching these chess videos and stuff, and I'd seen him win several matches.
right,
And in this one match where he was losing, it's what you described. He was visually flustered. He clearly was getting a little emotional during
right.
the match, and it did remind me of it's just like watching a jiu-jitsu match fall apart. It's when you watch someone, or when I
100%.
watch myself, like when a roll starts not going my way. I probably, not that I look angry or upset, but in my mind, I'm just like, oh God, dude, this sucks. Everything's getting worse and worse. And like,
Right.
so I love what we're talking about here because number one, there's a lot of correlation between those two things. But secondly, the breathing and the state of mind really does matter in those moments. So you have to be able to keep it together and come back to the table, so to speak, metaphorically, when
Right.
things are not going your way. And yeah, breathing
And
is obviously a great place to start.
I think one of the other things as well that beginners definitely have is they definitely have, and even some more experienced guys, but they have an expectation that they should do way better than they should. And so this is I think a common problem that links into it is that they get anxious because they have these expectations. They don't actually realize that nobody else is thinking about how they're doing. Like apart from the coaches, maybe like no one else, almost nobody in jiu-jitsu cares how anyone else is doing. If they're winning, all they're thinking is I'm winning. And so they often have anxiety. And I try and one of the things I've tried saying to them recently to guys is like, if anyone plays golf, right, you don't always have to take a driver off the tee, right? Just because everyone else is taking a driver, there's nothing wrong with you taking a 6-iron. Play your own game. You're not here to measure yourself. You're here to improve. And I've sometimes had it where students of mine roll with me on a certain day, and um, they have no idea what my intentions are in that role. So my intentions in that role might be I've just come back from BJJ Fanatics camp with Bernardo. He's been working. We've been working quarter guard, a position I don't play, and I'm trying to play quarter guard, and I'm trying to get into quarter guard during spars. I'm trying to force quarter guard, no matter what, or deep half, whatever you want to call it. But like he's playing in these positions, and I'm using the lapel. I don't usually use the lapel that much, and I'm sometimes struggling in that. And so some of the guys are coming off, and it's like, oh, I did pretty well with Glyn today. Then I roll with them in another session, if however long afterwards, and they're then messaging other coaches in the gym, and they're like, oh, they're in like one of the coaches messaged me, and like X is like having a real, almost like a breakdown on Messenger to me about jiu-jitsu. He's not improving and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, what's that? He said, oh well, he said he rolled with you, before, and like he did really well against you, and then like you just rolled with him this morning, and like he tapped 7 times in 5 minutes, and right, and it's like, yeah, because this morning I felt pretty good. My back was good. I hadn't really sparred the previous day. Just did, very light training and whatever. Felt great. And the guy was coming after me, and yeah, today he got it right. but these expectations people have, even like you get purple, brown, black belts, even will have these ideas that, oh, I'm improving because I rolled really well against somebody who like they had no idea that like I was just working on one thing that I'm not very good at. And then like another day they get the A game, right? But this I think is another part of this, that if actually they were way more focused on even just their breath work when they were rolling, like sometimes literally, Ryan, I'm just trying to get more air into my lungs and be more efficient. And I'm noticing that like I'm just a little tense in the hands and it's causing me to use more air than I need. And I just like some rolls, I literally am just trying to nasal breathe and load my belly as much as I can as I'm moving. And there is no other thought going on in the roll than that. Other times I dismiss the breathing. There's odd times I will just not even think about it and I'm just playing a game. But like I'm never really learning that much when I'm doing that. But sometimes you just almost want the relief, the fun of just playing with no thought. Um, I'm not saying that's optimal for learning, but like sometimes it is just jujitsu as a stress release for all of us, right? But I
Yeah.
think that's definitely an element that affects people's breath work, psychology, and so on. And I think the more they actually focused on just improving their breathing, if you can get through a round and you've just like really you've breathed really well, you're coming off, you can talk like I'm talking now. I've just done nasal breathing. My training partner who I've just had the role with is like, even if they had me in cross-side top for the entire 5 minutes, if I've come out of it and I've just survived and I'm not blowing air, right? And they're like they've been trying to smash me, smash me, smash me, and they're exhausted, like that can be a win as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on the topic of like managing the panic that happens when we're losing positions and when we're losing the momentum of a roll or a competition match, what are your thoughts? Are there any like interesting scientifically backed things that you've learned about breathing that directly have impact on people's emotions, like on their emotional well being and on their I guess their nervous system in general that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of research out there on the nervous system. I mean, I mean, the whole thing around belly breathing and basically staying away from fight or flight. That there's tons of things out there on that, and the nasal breathing. And there's all this stuff. I don't know if you saw it with Wim Hof, where they injected him with I think it was a type of botulism that would invoke nausea and some other things. And he basically did all the breathing, and they were just amazed at how it just had almost no impact on it. Um,
Wow.
Hickson's talked about. I mean, there's tons of studies out there. I mean, I personally am kind of more interested in stuff where like Hickson was talking about, the likes of Andre Galvao, Saulo in Jiu-Jitsu University, said, oh, the last time I rolled with Hickson, this was one of the submissions he caught me with. And this is Saulo Hibiero. It's like,
Yeah.
I think in his retirement match, he lost like 3-5 to Hodger. And, obviously these things are a few years before. Saulo's obviously improved a lot. But like, this is Saulo Hibiero talking about this is one of the submissions Hickson caught me with. And then Hickson's like, doesn't name names, but he says, well, oh, when all these famous champions, talk about me arm locking them or choke them, they always ask me like, show me the arm lock, show me the choke. And he's like, no, the reason they lost is their heart rate was too high. And he said, I show them the arm lock, I show them the choke, but the thing they should ask me is, why did you lose? And it's like, because my heart rate's 150 and theirs is 180, and at around 180 their body just starts to effectively shut down. They can't think straight and so on. He said, and that's when I apply the arm lock or I apply the choke. He exhausts them. And so this is I mean, it's just without question. And then within chess, Boris Gelfland has been a guy who I think tied with Vichy for the world championship. Vichy kept the world championship because he didn't beat him. I think he drew with him. But Vichy Anand was a world champion. And Gelfand has, again, is all about the heart rate and keeping the heart rate as low as he possibly can. So you just hear this, and obviously Gukesh's coach says all the same thing. It's all about keeping the heart rate down. So the more you can keep your heart rate down during rolls, the better your decision making is going to be. The more you're going to remember of the roll, the more you're going to learn. And I think as a kind of linked point to this was Bernardo was talking just on Instagram, and I've just been interacting with him on it, um, talking about jiu-jitsu is he was talking about, you don't have to roll with everyone. This is another thing and I think this is really important. So Bernardo said, in my opinion, you don't have to roll with everybody in the gym. If you don't want to roll with somebody, you just say, it's not for me. And I think of this as being akin to a conversation. So there are different roles that we'll have with people. That jiu-jitsu for me is a conversation, and there's some people you just don't want to have a conversation with. It's that it really is that simple. If the conversation between us all the time, Ryan, is me just basically saying, Ryan, I'm going to kill you, Ryan, I'm going to kill you, Ryan, I'm going to kill you. I don't know what you're really getting out of that role, apart from maybe injuries, even inadvertent injuries. I'm not very good, but like I keep locking your knee in stupid positions and just bridging like a lunatic. And it's like you're not going to tap to it, right? But like I'm locking your knee in a bad position, and it's like that's just not a healthy way to train. It's not good. It's not you might pass my guard, mount me, crush me, choke me out. But at the end of it, your knee's like a bit sprained, and so those are actually, I think, conversations that we should really try and avoid. And so this then links back to, what really is a conversation. It's, well, a calm conversation is one where hopefully we're breathing correctly, we're taking our time with what we're saying and what we're thinking. But if I'm letting my breathing go and I'm getting really angry, then that again, it's just like conversation. It's usually a pointless conversation. It's like you're best off walking away from it. There's nowhere you can take me because I'm just angry and I'm mouth breathing. And I'm like chest going, my shoulders are up and down. I'm really cross, and so I think all of these things are kind of linked, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. I just saw that video the other day that Bernardo posted, and I definitely agree. I mean, you do have to, especially as you're getting like older, you have to be able
Right.
to, you have to be able to tell someone like, hey man, nothing personal against you. I'm just, yeah, you're either too heavy for me or, I'm nursing an injury. I just don't know if I want to go at the pace that you normally roll at. And there's nothing wrong
Right.
with that. You gotta, it's better to say that than walk home saying like, damn, now I'm hurt and I can't come back for 3 weeks because I didn't listen to my gut. I didn't trust my gut. You were talking about the idea of keeping your heart rate as low as possible during rolling,
Yeah.
and that's something I'd like to explore a little bit. And this is speaking of older grapplers. I'm 40 myself, so I'm in the Masters Club too. So with that said, how does someone use breath work to keep their heart rate low when they're training with younger or faster opponents who are rapidly picking up the tempo on them?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I try to do is I try to nasal breathe anyway in most practices as much as I can. So I think that the roles that you have with older guys, and by older guys I mean relative to me, I've got like a 57-year-old in my gym. I've got several 50-year-olds. It's a relatively small gym, but I have quite a few 50-year-olds, and they're not trained as much as I am. So one of the things, even just before we get to those more competitive roles, is thinking about getting the most technically you can out of people that you could easily beat. I
Mm.
do not see the point anymore at the age that I'm at in submitting, a 57-year-old blue belt. It's just like I'm better off mount bottom, back, you know, all the worst positions, and just drilling, letting him play, let him play, let him play, let him play. The other advantage of that is that when you do get to roll, when you are rolling with the younger guys, you've already reserved, you've optimized skill first and foremost, and you're also like still you're not exhausted, you're not going hard, you're not pushing the pace. So that's one of the things. There's an energy management element, being ready for those rolls. There's really learning to belly breathe. So that's super important. You can mouth breathe, you can nasal breathe, but you still want to belly breathe. Like Belissa's big on this. My breathwork instructor, she's like, you are going to have to mouth breathe at the highest levels of sport when it's really that's always going to happen. But like, you still want to breathe into your belly, not into your chest. So she always emphasizes that the belly chest prioritization of actually breathing into your belly is way more important than the nasal and mouth. I think the more often that you're used to nasal breathing when you roll, you actually start to realize the inefficiencies as if you just allow yourself to mouth breathe with everyone you roll with. You take harder grips than you need. This is something that you start to realize more about your connection to other people. How often am I taking a grip that really doesn't help my position? I see a lot of the time, even black belts taking lapel grips when they're saying guard, and the grip is nowhere near their throat. Now, if you're also mouth breathing and you're going hard, like what benefit does that grip actually have on the lapel? And I'm all ears if it does, but what I actually think is people just grab hold of something and it's like, what are you doing? Just burning the grip. So I feel like there's a whole process even before you get to worrying about these ultimate situations that you can actually just improve just on multiple levels by practicing, being as efficient as possible. So separating jujitsu as a skill, as like the chess, from the workout. To me, the ideal jujitsu practice would be such that I'm almost having to do a high intensity session, even if I'm a slow gainer with poor recovery. I'm doing so little in my practice in terms of muscular that I'm really getting less and less of a workout there that I need to maybe supplement it with some strength training. That would be almost the ideal of how you want to go. And then the other biggest thing is just this rib cage. So I had a 23-year-old fireman, big strapping guy, real athlete, come down for his first jiu-jitsu session, and he was this is a guy that basically runs up ladders with bodies on his back type thing. He can carry people down a ladder with a body on his back. Huge guy, great athlete. And he was amazed at how long I could inhale and exhale versus him. Like he couldn't believe how long I could just go. And it's the rib cage. It's opening, it's stretching the rib cage. So even though he's doing weight training already, as sees it as essential, and as big strong guy, rib cage wise, at 26, I was inhaling, exhaling. Like he was just like, that's just crazy. You can do that. And I'm like, yeah, but I do the exercises for it. I'm opening up my rib cage. I'm stretching. I'm putting myself in certain contorted positions, and we're doing full inhales, and then almost like the Mike Mensa method of going to absolute failure on the breath whilst you're twisted up. And when you do that in these, and I show some of these examples, when you do that, when you get in scarf hold, your rib cage can just cope with it. And yeah, I find that you can just lay on a lot of people's rib cages, even black belts, and you can feel their rib cage is actually weak, no matter how strong they are. They can often be, lifting great muscles, great physiques, but like that often has nothing to do with the quality of their rib cage. And so I think this is one of the biggest cheat codes for this. My cardio isn't great. It's like your rib cage is doing that on you. And no matter how much you lift weights, unless you're opening that rib cage out, doing conditioning work, getting used to having a full lung and demanding your body get more air in, and then on the exhale, like still getting more air out. It's amazing how long you can keep getting air out once you've mastered that internal dialogue that says, I need to breathe. I need it, I need air, I need air. No, you don't. Shut up. And you can take it to a point where you would have made probably somebody vomit or yourself vomit a few weeks before, be like, I can't do this anymore, I've got to take it in. And all of a sudden you're like all the way through on it. So almost everything people think about the cardio, like, oh, I need to cycle, I need to run, I need to this. It's like, no, you don't. That doesn't help you in jiu-jitsu. In my opinion, doesn't help you in jiu-jitsu at all. It doesn't transfer. Cycling's hard when you first have it's a motor skill. When you first have to learn to cycle, you get on there, you fall off, your mom or dad helps you, you have the stabilizers or whatever, right? But that doesn't really help your cardio because you master the motor skill and then you get good at it. Go swimming. You can see loads of people who are obese in a swimming pool. They've got a great stroke and they can go length after length after length, but they can be really fat. And so these things are not helping people. What will help them in jiu-jitsu is really opening that rib cage out. It is like a cheat code for cardio.
Glyn, would you mind walking me through an exercise here on the show? Basically, I've heard a lot about belly breathing and the importance of belly breathing.
Yeah.
Is it nothing more than just inhaling to the point where my stomach is expanding and that's it? Rather than is it that simple?
Pretty much. And then
Okay.
the thing about it is as well is like we're so switched off from our bodies a lot of the time that this is really what to me meditation is just switching off just the endless noise around us and really
Hmm.
just focusing on our body. And so if you put your hand on your belly right now, and particularly if
Okay.
you've got like the back of a chair, you've got something to brace yourself against, right? You literally where you are right now, you can breathe into your belly And then as you're breathing into your belly, you can actually say, and you could use your mouth to do this to begin with, but you can actually say, I want to breathe into my back. And you'll actually start to feel like you can breathe into your back,
Oh yeah, yeah, I do yeah, I do feel that.
right? So you can breathe into
That's
all
cool.
these areas, right?
Wow.
And so this is the thing. When someone says I can't breathe, it's like, no, you can breathe. Like if people can be in, in a Mexican earthquake or Guatemala or somewhere like that, and they get pulled out of the rubble 4, 5, 6 weeks afterwards, where they've had heavy weight, you know, on them for all that time, it's like they could breathe. They did breathe. They didn't have a choice but to breathe. Their body was was making them breathe, right?
Yeah.
And so, like you can definitely survive someone laying on your diaphragm. It's not. It feels bad. I'm not saying it doesn't feel really really bad, but once you start to develop this skill and you put your body in there enough times, it's like you're going to be okay. And then it's like, well, where else can this be applied? Where else am I shortchanging myself with my internal dialogue that's simply really just being negative, and we just change it to a positive, or we switch it off, and we just connect and we start thinking about, oh yeah, I can actually breathe into my back. I can get air. I am getting air into my body. It's just it's not comfortable, right?
That's great. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you walking me through that too. That's very helpful. Let me ask you this. We were talking earlier, you mentioned in passing that, that you're not someone that meditates a whole lot. That kind of surprises me. I would have assumed that someone that's really into breathwork would have been into meditation. What has been your relationship with meditation? Why is it something that you don't practice a whole lot?
I don't think, I mean, there are people out there that definitely, like, I don't feel that I have a huge amount of experience in meditation. Um, and whether you say, well, someone could say to me, this is meditation, what I'm talking about, and if that's the case, then cool. Um, but I've never thought of, like, I've never been into, you know, yoga or Indian mysticism or whatever you want to call it. I don't mean that to like offend anyone, but there are people like, I mean, there's like Michael Hines who runs SPG New Braunfels. He's like lived in India. He's like done meditation with like some of the top gurus in India, and he literally will go, and like I've roomed with him on camps and stuff like that. He'll literally go and meditate, switch himself off, and it'll be like 40 minutes of just sat there like with his eyes shut. Like that's not me. I can't do that for 40 minutes. I can fall asleep after doing some breath work patterns. So see, to your point on insomnia, I feel like Wim Hof has a breathwork pattern he recommends specifically for getting back to sleep or getting to sleep at night. But I've actually, to be honest, Ryan, found out, and I'm not a heavy sleeper, but I've found that any breathwork pattern where I just focus on that specific pattern, uh, almost anything will take me to sleep if I focus on it enough. It doesn't really seem to matter what I do. It's just taking control of that internal dialogue and just switching it off. Um, and so I've even found some of the things that Wim Hof says to really energize you, these breathwork rounds, I've found they're actually great when I'm feeling anxious and I want to get back to sleep. 3, 4, 5 rounds of them, they're physically kind of hard. Um, they're physically kind of hard, but they basically take all that anxiety away. And that once that's out of the way, I feel like then I can drift off. Um, but I definitely think that for some people, this will potentially be a pathway into other things, and it's like that's the beauty of it, right? Everyone's journey on this can be different. But I think as somebody who's, I'm very goal driven. I'm very much the kind of opposite of everything, and I've dismissed this for so long, and then to not have to use inhalers anymore, to be able to survive a soul stealer like that, where I know I would never have survived it before, to know how it's improved my jiu-jitsu as well. Like I feel like I just wish I'd done this sooner and earlier on. And I'm seeing it in the guys that do listen. There are some people that just do not listen on the breathwork side of it. I think ego is a big part of it. I was actually talking to Mike about this yesterday, and like we still have students who, no matter how much we talk about the breathing side of it, just don't care. I mean, they don't care. They always, when they roll, it will be to win, and that's fine. And I don't think there's like, you're never going to be able to help them. I think it's interesting. They always tend to be in certain like vacations. Like I think typically like they're disproportionately in things like sales and, aggressive target goal driven environments. So, but I also think those are the guys that, if you can get them around, benefit the most, but they're the hardest to get there.
When it comes to controlling breath and dealing with pressure in jiu-jitsu, there's been a couple people over the years I've seen explain, for example, like Eric Paulson and Josh
Right.
Barnett, explain that when you get to Keisagatami, one of the great things you can do there is use it as a compression submission on the
Right.
lungs. And so
Right.
the idea is that they can breathe out, but then getting the air back in is what becomes the problem. Do you feel that by doing these kinds of exercises, is that something that could be survived as well if you had proper breathing, even if you're not able to expand your lungs very much? Is there still methods to still get sufficient oxygen?
Yeah, I mean, I think with some of these guys, they might actually be. I mean, they're using breath work as a weapon from the top position as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So this is one of the things I've noticed with doing things like applying triangle, like when you're actually like rear naked choke, right? When you're applying a rear naked choke, fill your belly, fill your chest up. You're giving them less room. You're bracing, right? The same. So I think on almost all submissions, when you're applying it, you can use it. Like the reason I gave Henry as the example is like I'm about 180. I think at the time he's probably about 235. He's definitely heavier than me, like way heavier than me. He was definitely around, heavyweight. Um, and I survived it. I can't say like I would survive Josh Barnett's or I don't know. I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know what that feels like. And it's not just the breath work. Josh is probably cranking your neck. He's hitting you with an Americana. Yeah, he's got a whole box of tricks as well.
Whole
So
fun house full of pain. Yeah.
yeah, there's a whole thing. So even if you can survive the diaphragm, he might break your elbow, your neck. So I can't say, but in terms of, I certainly think that when they're talking about like doing things like that, this ability to exhale for way longer than you normally could, like, is maintaining your ability to control. That I do think that some elements of the submission to the tap are the fact that almost nobody on bottom hangs out in that position very often with somebody who's much heavier than them either. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if I could survive Josh's. I could tell you that I think anyone on average against, the people they're generally training with, that, like, I have, as I say, I have purple belts that I cannot tap to this, that not that long ago would tap to pressure within seconds. And I just can't tap them to it anymore. And I can try and Americana them and so on, but it does give them, then, like, they're way more focused on their escape because it's just not having the same impact on them. So
Yeah.
this is part of the thing, is that if they get you into a panic, even if you don't tap to the pressure, if you're in a panic and you're struggling, you're far more likely to tap to the Americana because you want the position to just be over, right? If you're not comfortable there. So it definitely is something that will help. And even no matter if they do that, like in terms of like the using their breath and so on, and waiting for you to exhale and then trying to catch you when you're empty, they can also try and catch you when you fill up as well. You get towards bursting point and they jolt you and you're not used to it. It can also be like, that's like effectively being like, you can be winded that way as well, right? So you can be winded on a full lung, having the whole thing just knocked out of you. But all of this really is about that mental element of where your mind goes, I can't breathe. And it's like that's what that for me, you're taking control of the dialogue in this. Oh, I can't do this. And it's like, but you are. You're still talking to me. You've just told me you can't. I can breathe. It's like you're breathing now. You could breathe. You weren't not breathing when you were in there. Um, so yeah, but Josh is someone I don't know. I want to go that far.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, in general, though, it seems
Yeah.
like there is strategies
It's a game
and
changer.
methods to survive. Yeah. And I
100%.
appreciate you sharing your insight. I really do appreciate your insight on sharing all this, because it's an aspect of jiu-jitsu that we don't talk about a lot, at least not enough, So I appreciate giving insight. For anyone out there interested, Glyn has a great instructional with us called Breathe to Win, Mastering Breathwork and Connection for BJJ Success. And it's available right now at bjjfanatics.com. Glyn, for the people that decide to check the instructional out, what are some big points that you hope that they take home with them?
Yeah, so I mean, the way in which I've done this, I'd like it to be a gateway for sort of further research. So the big thing I'd like them to take away is, one, if they improve in their breath work just generally, they're going to improve on so many levels. They're going to improve on almost like the psychosomatic side, the mental side of it. So things like insomnia, dealing with somebody cutting them up in traffic, being late for meetings and they let everything go. It's like this, you're using jiu-jitsu as a vehicle to improve your life, which is what Hickson said. So I'm hoping I do justice to sort of Hickson's message on that. So you're going to improve all aspects of your life. You're also going to improve, I think, if you take it to heart, your general roles. And what I've also done is given you a training method really for how you can actually, particularly if you're a gym owner or coach, but even if you're not, you can take control of your roles. No, I've never seen anybody say, "Oh no, I don't want to start in scarf hold against you." Pretty much everyone will take that position, right? Like play with it. Get used to being down there. There's some practical like escapes in terms of things that how to apply the breath work at different parts of the scarf hold, everything from bracing. I kind of explain how that crosses over into positions like mount, so like Hickson Gracie's Upa, and some technical aspects of the Upa, but like how important breath work is when you bridge and filling up and using that brace. And it's also a gateway in that I think there are people that have go into massive depth on some of these things, and I think what ends up happening is by all means go and study them. But what I tend to find people do is they just look at the enormity of some of the other products that are out there, and I think they almost like do nothing almost. What I'm giving you is the stuff that's going to get you going. If you really want to improve your breath work as much as possible with as little effort as possible, that's what I'm kind of giving you. Even down to like, if you can't be bothered to do all of the stretches in there, there is one specific stretch that you should do every day, no matter what, if you can, or at least every other day, whenever you can, you do that stretch, and your ability to survive in that soul stealer type position, head and arm position, is going to rocket. And then when that starts to rocket, you're going to start realizing that it's everywhere. So this is a kind of, it's almost like a gateway drug, right? It's going to open you up really to this smorgasbord of breathwork applications for all elements of your life, almost all elements of jiu-jitsu. I'm still discovering all these years on things that I wish I'd realized about breathwork, how it improves my jiu-jitsu, even like 2 years ago. I wish, if we'd rolled 2 years ago and you got me in a triangle, I wished I knew what I knew now from going on this journey, because I'm way more likely to have success than I would have been 2 years ago. And it's not so anything any techniques that you've got, it kind of improves multiple techniques when you know when to apply a breath hold. So for me, this is just an absolutely massive area. And then you can go into things like, which I don't even cover, but you can go into things like, if you want to, all the cold showers and the ice baths. And there's just so many ways you can take this thing. But I think if you don't start some form of jiu-jitsu journey, whether it's Wim Hof, whether it's what I'm talking about, whether it's some of the other instructors out there, Gymnastica Natural, you are kind of missing out, really.
Again, guys, it's
Thank you.
Breathe to Win on bjjfanatics.com. It's available right now, so go check it out. This will be have a huge impact on your game, no matter what level you are in the sport. So check it out right now, bjjfanatics.com. Glyn, in closing, what are some of your major goals for 2026? What are some things that you hope to accomplish this year?
I want to get my basically my next chess tile that I've got in mind.
Nice.
I need to keep growing my AI company as well. I think be a better father, a pretty good one.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be here today, Glyn. This was an awesome conversation. Well, folks, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Glyn, it's really been a pleasure, man. I appreciate you taking the time to be here today. Like I said, the subject matter that you brought to the table today is something that really doesn't get talked about enough in jiu-jitsu. So it was great to be able to pick your brain and hear some insights and learn firsthand how breathwork can have such a big impact on your game. And man, you're welcome back on the show anytime you'd like to come back.
Thank you, Ryan. It's been awesome.
Excellent. I'm glad you had a good time. For anyone out there that wants to keep up with Glyn, it's real easy to do so. He might be the only Glyn Powditch on the internet. Is that what you said? It said you're pretty easy to find.
I am the number one. Yeah.
Excellent. So if you guys type his name into Facebook, you'll find him. Make sure you follow him. His Instagram is Glyn Powditch. And then also, guys, his YouTube channel is SBG Rossendale. If you guys are ever traveling through Rossendale, traveling through the UK, anywhere near Manchester, make sure you drop into his academy. Great group of people, great training. Drop in if you can. If you can't drop in at his academy, you can learn from him anywhere in the world here at bjjfanatics.com. Like we talked about in depth, his instructional is called Breathe to Win, Mastering Breathwork and Connection for BJJ Success. And it's available right now on the website, bjjfanatics.com. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast.